Man, I don't even know how long I've been training Jake Nauracy. It's been a long time. I think I had him when he was like 15, and his cousin brought him into the gym. He was in wrestling, and he told me he wanted to fight one day. I thought he was some punk kid, so I let him train. I used to beat him up, and he started competing in jiu-jitsu, started winning tournaments. Kept telling me he wanted to fight, and I kept making him train, and he started fighting and doing very well. Now he's a champ of a couple different organizations. Every fight he doesn't cease to impress me, and I see a promising future for him, and I think he's going to do great.
Tell me about when did you feel like he was ready to fight? I mean, you do not let guys fight unless you feel that they're ready.
Well, I use him as a training partner. The main thing for me was that he would help me train for fights, and when I started seeing him, I was using him more and more. I made him come train with me more and more because he was a great training partner. And with all the guys that I train with, or all the guys that I let fight, I gauge how well they're doing in a fight with how well they do in training when I'm training with them. And for me, he was a great training partner, and I knew he was ready for fighting when he was having me train for fights more.
Why do you feel he's a good training partner? I mean, what makes him stand out?
He can put up with the abuse that I put him through. He comes back, and his skills. He wins first place in tournaments. He does great here against guys that are bigger than him, and just in general, I can gauge a level of competition, and he has that. He's ready for that level.
Where do you foresee Jake's future? I mean, you have seen a lot of guys' future, but where do you foresee Jake's future?
If Jake can stay healthy and stay focused, I can see him go all the way to the top.
WEC, join you.
Go wherever he wants to go. What I say doesn't matter. It's what he wants to do. So wherever he wants to go, he's gonna put himself. I can open doors for him to go anywhere. It just depends on what doors he wants me to open.
Now, tell me about the pressure. Do you feel that there's extra pressure on him knowing that he's one of your main training partners and stuff? I mean, you bring your camp around, you bring them to your fights, and so that they can get exposed to that big fight feel. I mean, do you feel that that's benefiting them?
For sure, it's a benefit. I make sure all the guys that are fighting for me come to see what it's like to be on a different level. And now that I'm training with a different gym, they're gonna start being experienced to training in a different atmosphere with all pro fighters. And I think it's an asset to them. But like I said before, it's not a matter of what they're exposed to. It's what they do with it. I can expose somebody to being around geniuses all day. If they don't pick their brain, if they don't try to study with them and try to learn the way they learn, it's not going to benefit them at all. So for me, it comes down to what he does with what I expose him to. And he's doing great things with it. So the sky's the limit for him as long as he wants to learn.
Away from Nauracy, let's talk about Bobby Joe Maldonodo. Bobby Joe is, he helps you train also, and is one of the wrestling coaches here at Torres Martial Arts, and he's also fighting. And tell us about how his development and just the camaraderie that you have between him.
Same thing, I haven't been training Bobby Joe for as long as Nauracy, but Bobby Joe has a different skill set. He's been wrestling his whole life, so he brings something different to the table. His wrestling is top notch, his boxing is great, and he's been helping me train for my fights for the past 3 years. So you got a guy like Bobby Joe who on the other side of the spectrum has abilities of a Chael Sonnen. He can grind guys out with the ground and pound. He can take guys down at will, and his jiu-jitsu is good. He's been training with me at TriStar. He's been training with me in Vegas. He's been all over the world with me. So you got a guy on a whole different aspect, on a whole different level as a Jake Nauracy. Similar weight classes, different skill sets, different approaches to a fight, and they both get the job done. And they both have the same exposure. So it's the same thing. The guy has the exposure to the top-notch things in the world. It's what he does with it it's going to make the difference.
He's coming up for his second fight on November 6th. What are you telling him in preparation for his fight? What did you do in his first fight?
I don't tell these guys pretty much anything. I open the door for them. They come into the door. I beat the shit out of them, and then I see what they do with it. There's not much you could tell a guy when he's going into a fight besides train him. Train him to the best of your ability and let him know that he's prepared. If you train for a fight the right way, if you put your time in the gym, the day you show up to the fight, all you got to hear is that you prepared for this, you're ready for this, you've had the best training partners, you've had the best training, you're focused, and go out there and do work. There's not much I should have to tell you the day of your fight or the leading up to your fight to prepare you. If I got to go out there and tell you, keep your hands up and don't drop your hand and throw your right hand, then when he jabs, you jab. If I got to give you a step-by-step instructional sheet on how to fight, you're not ready to fight. By the time you step into your fight, you should know how to do everything already. It's going to do itself. All you got to do is show up. And all I got to do is remind you of that.
Knowing that they're both from East Chicago, Jake grew up in East Chicago, so did Bobby Joe. I mean, Tell us about the East Chicago connection with both guys.
They happen to be from the harbor. They happen to be from East Chicago. That's a blessing for me. I train a lot of guys. These two guys happen to be from East Chicago, and bringing somebody up in the fight game that is from the same area where I grew up in is makes me feel proud.
Also, with knowing that they're fighting November 6th, that time at Civic Center, that's a place where you've had some great moments. How is that special to you? Does that, how do you, what are your thoughts on that?
Civic Center is a good place to throw fights. It's one of the main places we have in Hammond. I mean, I had a lot of great experiences there, and I just hope they get to have the same thing. I mean, other than that, it's just a building with 4 walls and a place where they have a cage. Other than that, the fights can be there. They can be outside. They can be wherever. It could be 1,000 people there or 2 people. The experience that they're going to get from the fight is going to be where they get from a fight. And as long as they do well, I'm happy.